بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون صدق الله العلي العظيم. My dear respected brothers and sisters listening online, brothers here, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Come and take a seat, inshallah. The dars for today is titled Taqwa. What is Taqwa? Allah Azza wa Jal states in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykum siyamu kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. That, O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed to you just as it was prescribed to the nations that came before you. Why? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may attain God consciousness, so that you may become pious. That's the purpose of you becoming, or that's the purpose of you fasting in essence. So we have to understand what taqwa is in order for us to understand what is God consciousness, that thing that we're supposed to learn. Like, it's like if your teacher says to you in school that, you know, this is the punishment for the crime that you've committed, right? And this is the lesson that you're supposed to learn. But you don't end up learning that lesson. You're like, what is the lesson that I'm supposed to learn from this punishment? It doesn't make any sense to me, right? So what is the lesson that we have to take from this? What is that taqwa that we need to improve on, that we're supposed to have in our lives? So taqwa is an Arabic word which is technically explained as a shield, right? Against any type of wrongdoing, against any type of evil and immorality. And it's expanded further by ulama who have stated that it's being conscious of Allah, being aware of Allah. Others have translated it as being in fear of Allah, being in awe of Allah. The origin of the word taqwa is from the Arabic root letters waqaya, which means a shield, to protect oneself. And its verb is from the word ittaqi. Ittaqi means to be careful, or to be protected, to be cautious about something. So taqwa, essentially, the ulama have said, is like an internal it's like the internal compass that you're supposed to have. Internally, something that tells you, you know what, this is right, I should do it. It's that internal compass that tells you, no, this doesn't look right, this doesn't sound right, this doesn't feel right. It's wrong, Allah is not going to be pleased with me if I was to do this. That's what taqwa is. So the broader meaning is a development of taqwa leads to a development of one's behavior. It regulates our behavior because we become cautiously aware of the acts of worship that we have to perform. We become aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like the ultimate camera. I gave that example yesterday, right? You know, if someone was to drive down Thomas Lewis Way now, and you're driving down Thomas Lewis Way and you're doing, it's late at night, there's no cars on the road. So you're speeding, you're doing 60 miles an hour, right? And I think it's 40 on Thomas Lewis Way. Yeah, you're doing 60 miles an hour because there's no cars on the road. There's nothing to stop you from doing 40 miles an hour, or to sticking to 40. There's nothing to stop you from doing 60 miles an hour because you don't see any police presence there. You don't see any cameras there. But as soon as a camera is placed on Thomas Lewis Way, then no matter what time of day it is, no matter where you are, what position you're in, how quick you need to get to your destination, when you come across that camera, it can be 2 o'clock in the morning, no cars on the road, you're going to slow down to 40 miles an hour out of fear of that camera. This is like an example of taqwa. Taqwa is like the ultimate camera. Every time you're going to do something bad, every time you're going to do something wrong, there's an understanding, Allah is watching me, right? Every deed of mine, whether they're good or bad, is being recorded by Allah. That's what taqwa is. So it's that consciousness, that awareness of Allah. And from that comes the fear. You know, when we translate taqwa as just being fear of Allah, no, we're not just supposed to fear Allah, we're supposed to love Allah also. We're supposed to be in awe of the majesty of Allah as well. Yes, of course, we fear His punishments, but that's just one aspect of taqwa. Sayyidina Abu Darda, he was a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said that from the completion of taqwa is that the servant, he fears from his Lord even with regards to the smallest of things, like the weight of an atom. So you fear everything. So even the smallest of deeds that you're going to do, you think to yourself, you think twice. You say, nah, would Allah be pleased with me if I was to do this? Would Allah be pleased with me if I was to carry this out? The Prophet ﷺ, when he was explaining taqwa to the companions, he said, taqwa ha huna. The taqwa is here, as in is deep within the chest. It's that internal compass that you're supposed to have. And he pointed to his chest. And it's profoundly explained in a conversation between Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab and Sayyidina Ka'ab radiallahu ta'ala, who were companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Listen to this. Sayyidina Umar asked Ka'ab radiallahu anhu about the meaning of taqwa, because Ka'ab was one of those 4 individuals from the companions of the Prophet who had been granted knowledge of the Quran. So he asked Ka'ab, what is the meaning of taqwa? How would you translate what taqwa means and explain it in the best possible way, because he was renowned for his deep understanding of the Quran. And Ka'ab then inquired with regards to Umar. He asked Umar a question. He said, look, before I answer what taqwa is, tell me this. Have you ever been in a position where you have to navigate your way through a thorny bush? You're navigating your way through through terrain that isn't comfortable for you, and you take your clothes, and what do you do with your clothes? If you're wearing a jubbah especially, right, you lift it up, don't you, right, and you protect your clothes, and then you watch carefully every step that you take, so you don't step in something that's going to harm you, or something that's going to rip or make your clothes dirty. And Umar said, yeah, I've been in that situation before. Like, that's happened to me. Like, it's happened to many of us, right? We've been in that situation where we go through some terrain where, it could potentially make our clothes dirty or ruin them. So now, Ka'ab said to Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala, that's taqwa right there. That's taqwa. That you navigate your way through life by lifting up your jubbah, your clothes, and by ensuring that nothing dirty comes on them. That you're protecting them from all stains, you're protecting them from all tears. And that path that it inculcates and embraces the character of taqwa. And it's a path that has to be cautiously and carefully treaded. One that, you're always aware of the smallest of these. The companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, these were people who, there was a man who came into the company of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was walking on his heels, right? He wasn't placing his entire foot, right, his sole on the ground. He was walking on his heels like this. And that's uncomfortable, right? Or on your tiptoes. If you're just going to walk on your tiptoes, he was just walking on his heels. And he was watching, and he was carefully taking every step where he goes. And the companions and the Prophet were witnessing this. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he sits down, he said, go explain your story to the people. And he explains the story that in the days of Jahiliyyah, in the days of ignorance, when I didn't have Iman and I didn't have faith, it was something that they would do was to bury their daughters alive, right? And he said, he talks about his story that a child was born to him, to his wife, and the child was a girl. And naturally, this is something that stressed him out. He didn't want to tell the people, so he said to his wife that, listen, I'm gonna have to kill her. That's it. She's gonna have to die. And his wife had a love, the love that a mother has for her child, irrespective of whether that child is a boy or a girl. She wanted to protect him. And this ignorant individual, when he's talking about himself, he said, I was ignorant then. And it was ignorance, it was jahala at the time, that these companions who in that time they didn't have the beauty of Islam in their lives, and there were among them many mushrikeen who were engaged in such activities. So he lets it be. So he says to his wife that she can stay here as long as nobody finds out about her. She was about 6 years old. She grows up in secrecy, and then people start to ask questions. Perhaps I think that child that he had 6 years ago, that girl, she's still alive. So he says to his wife, that's it, I don't care, I'm going to take her and I'm going to bury her, right? I'm going to get rid of her. So he takes her to this far remote place, and he tells her to dig. I'm cutting the story really short because I've got about 3 minutes left. So he tells her to dig, and she's digging. He's digging, and as he's digging, the dust and the dirt is landing in his beard and on his face and on his clothes, and she's there cleaning his clothes and cleaning, the dirt and the dust out of her father's beard. And this individual, he's doing so knowing that he's digging her grave. Right? She's unaware of that, and then she's placed in the. He tells her to look over, and when she looks over, he pushes her in, and then he continues to bury her, and she's screaming, she's asking, why? What have I done? Dad, I love you, right? But he was merciless, and he continued to fill up that grave until he couldn't hear her cries no longer. And when he's telling the story, he's crying, and the companions say that not a single face was dry. Everyone was upset, everyone was crying. Now this individual, having accepted Islam, has become so full of taqwa and God consciousness that he's walking on his heels. And the reason why he's walking on his heels is once he's accepted Islam, he realizes that every life is precious. The life of every creature is precious. He doesn't even want to step on an ant or an insect and kill it. That's why the Quran talks about these people. وَيَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ حَوْنًا, that they tread the earth carefully. This is taqwa. And this is what Islam brought them, as opposed to what Jahiliyyah was like, what ignorance and Jahala was like. And this is what essentially how we should behave in terms of consciously aware of everything around us, not wanting to hurt someone's feelings, not wanting to hurt someone's emotions, not wanting to bring somebody down, not wanting to feel like we're superior over anybody else. No. Taqwa means that you submit yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You submit yourself to the mercy, to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you live your life in accordance to the way that He wants you to live it. Where you're taking care of your surroundings. You're taking care of your family members. You're kind and compassionate towards those who you deal with, who come across you. And in that way, that's how you will become representatives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and people will be inspired to follow the religion through you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me and you the tawfiq and the ability to act upon the teachings of the Quran and noble sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. If you could follow me with dua, Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allimna ma yanfa'una wa zidna 'ilma walhamdulillahi ala kulli hal. Amin.